You don't even remember when it started. Only that now, even choosing feels like failure. You stand in front of the smallest decision, and somehow it rewrites your entire worth. You tell yourself you're just thinking it through. But you know better. You're not buying time, you're buying distance. From regret, from being seen choosing, and still being wrong. And when someone tells you you did the right thing, you smile. But your stomach twists. Because what if they're wrong about you too? You used to think indecision meant you were weak. Now you're not so sure. Maybe it's just the only way you know how to stay safe, without saying you're scared. And the worst part? You almost convinced yourself it's normal. It's strange how a single decision can drain you more than an entire day of effort. You stare at the calendar. One task, simple, just pick a time, but your finger hovers over the screen like it's a detonator. You tell yourself it's about scheduling, logistics, timing, but inside, something smaller, older, tightens. Because it's never just the choice, it's the story your brain builds around it. What if you pick wrong? What if they're disappointed? What if it confirms what you already suspect? That you're not ready, not capable, not enough. So you don't choose, you stall, you scroll, you open another tab, hoping distraction will feel like progress. But all it does is quiet the room just enough for the noise inside your head to get louder. You probably know this feeling, even if you've never said it. That moment when someone says, "Take your time," and your chest tightens. Not out of relief, but because now there's no deadline to save you from the spiral. And the worst part is, you look fine. They see you working, answering, smiling. You even get praised for being careful, thoughtful, thorough. But here's what no one sees. You're not thorough. You're terrified, because somewhere along the way, choosing became proof of whether you belong, of whether you're allowed to take up space. You learn to hide it well. Maybe it started with something small, a math test, a question you got wrong. Not because you didn't know, but because you second-guessed yourself. Changed the answer last minute, and the look on their face when they marked it wrong stuck. So you began checking everything, twice, then 3 times, then forever. Because certainty felt like the only way to earn safety. And hesitation became the only way to survive being wrong. Now years later, it's not a test. It's dinner plans, a text, a life decision. And still, your stomach drops the same way. Like any choice could betray you. Here's the part that still stings. Even when someone says, "Whatever you decide, I'll support it," you don't believe them. Because it's not about their response. It's about what your mind does the second the door closes. You replay it. You unmake it. You imagine 100 alternate versions and mourn the ones you didn't pick. And then you start to wonder, did I choose what I wanted? Or did I choose what would make me feel least ashamed? That's the trap. It's not analysis, it's anticipatory guilt. Your brain rehearsing regret before anything even happens. And the more you try to fix it by thinking harder, the deeper you sink. Because logic was never the issue. Fear was. Some days it's loud, others it's quiet. But it's always there. That invisible pull to postpone. You don't say no. You just don't respond. Not yet. You'll get to it. You will, but the tab stays open. The decision lingers, like a weight you don't remember picking up, but now can't seem to put down. And every unfinished task becomes a tiny echo. Why is this still hard for you? Why can't you just decide like everyone else? You convince yourself it's because you're careful, that you're buying time. But deep down, you're buying protection. From the judgment that might come, from the silence that might follow, from the voice that says, "If they praise you now, imagine how hard the fall would be if they saw the real you." There's a moment, right after you hit send or confirm or yes, when your chest locks. Not because you regret the choice, but because there's no more stalling. Now you have to sit with it, with whatever it might say about you, with whatever comes next. And sometimes, it's nothing. Nothing bad happens. They respond, the plan works, it all unfolds fine, but it doesn't feel like relief. It feels blank, like you dodged something, but can't figure out what. And that emptiness? It's the part no one prepares you for. The silence after anxiety, when the storm didn't hit but your body still braced for impact. You start to notice it everywhere. At the cafe, you can't pick a drink. On your phone, you rewrite texts 4 times. Even at the grocery store, aisles make your chest tighten. You start to joke about it. Classic me, just indecisive. But every laugh feels a little more brittle, because it's not quirky anymore, it's exhausting, and no one really knows how much you carry just to look like you're functioning. It's not burnout, it's erosion, quiet, daily, invisible. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain learned to fear action as much as it fears inaction. And you're stuck in between, where no choice feels good, and no praise feels real, and no silence feels safe. You keep telling yourself you'll get better at this, that next time it'll be easier, that if you can just figure it out just once, you'll finally break the loop. But deep down, you're not sure if you even remember what wanting something felt like without weighing it against who you're allowed to be. And maybe that's the part you've been avoiding all along. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is how long you've kept going, making micro decisions with a macro level ache, smiling when someone says you're so easygoing when the truth is, you've just gone silent. Because when every option feels like a risk, you learn to choose the one that disappoints you the least. Not because it's right, but because it hurts the quietest. And this is where something quietly broke. Not in a moment, not in a crisis, but in the slow erosion of trust. In your own ability to want, to feel, to move toward anything without wondering if it will undo you. You stopped asking what you needed, started asking what would cause the least regret. And then eventually, you stopped asking anything at all. This is when the silence started to scream. Not out loud, not in words, but in the way your body hesitates over even the simplest things. Left or right, now or later, yes or no. You convince yourself it's smart, that caution is maturity. But deep down, you know it's fear. It's grief, coded as logic. Grief for all the things you never picked. Not because you didn't want them, but because wanting felt dangerous. Like claiming anything might expose you to loss. What if you stopped knowing who you are, but kept pretending you did? What if no one ever really knew you, because you never felt safe enough to show them? What if your strength was just you holding in the scream for too long? You try to remember the last time a decision felt good. Not just worked out, but felt good. And all you find are half memories. You changing an answer last second. You apologizing for speaking too soon. You making yourself smaller so your choice didn't take up too much space. You thought it was being considerate. Turns out it was erasure. Right here is where you got used to disappearing. Not in one grand gesture, but in small daily concessions. You stopped asking for what you wanted, started deferring, complying, calculating, until the only part of you that made it to the surface was the part that wouldn't be judged. And now, even the things you choose don't feel like yours. They're placeholders. Preemptive apologies dressed up as preferences. Micromanaged regrets. And that's what no one sees. Not your exhaustion, not your numbness, not the heavy silence that follows every yes you didn't really mean. You know how it ends. The task gets done, the message gets sent, the day moves on. But you're still there, frozen in that half second where your brain asked, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" And you said yes, but you didn't mean it. You just didn't know how to say no without unraveling everything. Let the moment hang right here, before anything resolves, before the twist reframes the loop. Let it ache in place. This isn't clarity, it's collapse, and it's been waiting. Maybe it wasn't about being indecisive. Maybe it was about not remembering how it ever felt to trust yourself. There were moments, split seconds, really, where you almost knew what you wanted, and then it disappeared. Under the weight of pleasing, of doubting, of not wanting to be a burden. And maybe that's what no one ever saw, that you weren't slow, you were scanning the room, for safety, for permission, for proof that wanting wouldn't cost you more than silence ever did. It's not that you forgot how to choose. It's that you started believing every choice needed to justify your worth. Every decision had to earn its space. You weren't frozen, you were surviving logic wrapped in fear, performing calm while your insides braced for collapse. And still, you smiled. You nodded, you got things done. What if every "I don't mind" was just a shield? What if you only paused because rushing felt like recklessness, but stillness felt like exposure? And what if you never really feared regret? You just couldn't bear another decision that made you feel invisible after. Somewhere in all the circling thoughts, in all the almosts and maybes, and I'll figure it outs, you learned how to disappear quietly. Not from others, but from yourself. It didn't fall apart. it faded, and no one noticed but you. You don't have to figure it all out, just don't disappear mid-thought.